I want to welcome you to It's Rainmaking Time. All of us are concerned about what's happening in the United States of America and the rest of the world, because what we're finding out is that what happens here is affecting people over there. What happens in banks over there is affecting people here. We're one organism, even though we're made up of different people and different cultures and backgrounds and orientations and ideologies from around the world. It is said in some circles that 48 states in the United States are on the verge of bankruptcy, are insolvent, that the FDIC is potentially insolvent and can't produce what it thinks it can. We're looking at the fact that the Federal Reserve is a private agency, and the fact that the Federal Reserve is a private agency has a very unique composite paradigm to it, which means that it can't always operate on behalf of what's good and the common good for people around the United States and the rest of the world. It is true that most of us do not understand central banking. We don't understand puts. We don't understand what it means to bet on financial industries throughout the modern world. When Muhammad Yunus developed the Grameen Bank 25 years ago, people didn't get it, that in order to establish credit, you didn't need collateral. And it's interesting to note that Muhammad Yunus was not a household name until December 2006 he got the Nobel Prize. My guest today is one of the most fascinating, eloquent, well-read, articulate women I have met since Muhammad Yunus, who has a thorough understanding into the financial services throughout the modern world from the ancient times. She not only understands 5,000 years of history and industries and nations and how civilizations transacted business, what is money, how it formed, how the central banking got to be what it is, and what is the Federal Reserve. I'd like you to welcome Ellen Hodgkins Brown, the author of Web of Debt, The Shocking Truth About Our Money System and How We Can Break Free. And what I want to tell you about Ellen is that what's so exciting about her is that she doesn't allow herself to get locked into an ideology. She doesn't allow herself to be politicked or to be involved politically one way or the other. She is for ushering in a solution to establish chartered banks, state chartered banks throughout America. She is a delight, and please welcome Ellen Hodgkins Brown. Welcome to It's Rainmaking Time.
Oh, thanks, Kim. It's great to be talking to you.
I really think that it's critical. You've been on so many different television and radio shows. You've had so many articles written about you. I think it's imperative that the public understand, what do the states have at their disposal right now, states and counties, that you're articulating in your book?
What most people don't know is that all of our money is created by banks when they make loans. And a state is not allowed to create money. That's in the Constitution. But a state is allowed to own a bank in the same way that any private company can own a bank. And so if the state were to take over this power of creating money by forming their own bank, it could be a win-win situation for both the public and for the state, because they can lower interest rates. They can still make a far better return on their money because, like any bank, they can magnify their deposits into 10 times that sum in loans. That's the way banks work. All banks do this. They all create... They take their deposits and they're allowed to make up to 9 times that sum in loans, and then, of course, they collect interest on that. So let's say you've got your state revenues, and instead of putting them in these small investments, right now they're in very secure investments, but the average return is like 3% on our money, the state's money. And the state has a lot of money, even though we're supposedly bankrupt. We have a huge asset base. So there's one state in the country that does this, and they've done it very quietly for the last 90 years. They own their own bank, and by law, all of the state's revenues go into this one bank, their bank, the Bank of North Dakota. This is a very obscure state. It's one of only 2 states that actually can meet their budgets. Well, by next year, 48 out of 50 states are not going to be able to meet their budget. North Dakota is one of 2 that can, and what's up there? There's nothing up there. But what they have is they've had their own bank for 90 years, so they are able to do what any bank does, fan that into many times that sum in loans. So they have one of the best student loan programs in the country. They give very low interest loans to farmers. They can fund their own debt. They are not FDIC insured. The FDIC is now broke, They are they self-insure, and so.
But it's the FDIC anyway is only insured for up to $100,000 anyway per account. So
it's now $250,000, but that's not very much. That's what Miami-Dade County is now talking about, forming their own bank for that reason, because they have up to $50 million in one account, and they could get wiped out if the bank goes bankrupt. So if they put them in their own bank, then not only is their money secure, but there's a candidate for governor of Florida, Khavari, who is talking about actually forming a state bank that would not only keep the state's revenue secure, but would actually do what all banks do, which is fractional reserve lending. In other words, turn those revenues into 10 times that sum in loans, and then you could make 2% loans instead of 5% loans to homeowners. You can totally solve all the debt problems of the state. You can make 2% loans to homeowners, so you can take that money and fan it into 9 times that sum in loans. So 2 times 9 is you're still making 18% on your money instead of 3.5%, which is what they would be getting if it's invested in U.S. government bonds or in ordinary, the ordinary investments that they make. So the state has now increased its share by about 5 times, and the homeowner has reduced their mortgage by more than half. So, what he's proposing is that you can.
What he is, the governor of one of the people running for governor, yeah, Khavari, Farid Khavari.
Right, he's running for governor of Florida, and he's an economist, and he's picked this whole idea up, and he's given the figures and everything, which I think is just great. I think Miami-Dade should do the same thing. Instead of just forming a depository bank, which is what they're talking about, just to protect the safety of their money, they should actually be using it like any bank does to make many times that sum in loans.
Could you talk about, I think the average person, even the average intelligent, informed person, does not understand central banking or fractional reserve lending. And Steve in the room, is the teleconference bridge, there's a line that's open. I hear somebody breathing, and I don't know if it's muted, but it should be muted till we call them in. I just want to thank you very much. So we're doing this, and you have to make little adjustments so you have a great product. Thank you, Steve. So can you explain fractional reserve lending and how it is? Because I didn't understand this, that you form a liability for every dollar you can take out 9. I hear some banks take out 20 times.
Oh, yeah?
Explain it, because people can't understand it, and a lot of people who hear it don't understand it.
Well, the rule is that the bank is supposed to keep 10% on reserve of, it can make loans, but it's supposed to have 10% of its deposit base on reserve. So people put money in the bank, and what everybody thinks happens is that they put their money in and they get a little return on their savings, and then the bank lends it out at a little more. But that's not what happens. Their money never leaves the bank. That 10% is your deposit base. They wouldn't dare lend out your deposit, because if they lend it out for a 30-year mortgage, what happens when you come for your money? That's your money. So what they are allowed to do is lend out a sum equal to 90% of that.
Oh my God,
deposit.
90%.
Of their first deposit. Now that deposit, almost all their loans are made to their own customers. So let's say you start with $100. The bank is allowed to make a $90 loan, and then that $90 loan becomes a deposit in that bank, because that's how they do it. They write it into the account of the borrower. That's how they make the loan. So now you've got $190 on deposit. So now you're not allowed to make a loan equal to 90% of that $90. So you can make an $81 loan, and then you can make 90% of that and 90% of that. So it ultimately turns into...
It sounds like a compounding, rolling, snowballing phenomenon.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, for sure. I would call it a pyramid scheme, because the problem is they're charging interest on all this money. Banks create all of our money. If we had no banks, we would have no money.